work? Okay. Okay. Alright, cool. Okay.
Is
So
your head is cut off? Why is your head?
yeah. So
You
okay,
want to
thanks
hire-
everyone for coming.
Oh, okay.
And I'm honored to introduce Yamania Carey. So she calls herself an evolutionary change agent, and she's an international speaker, workshop facilitator, master healer, and activist. So she's the founder of the foundation Birthing a New Humanity. Her experience has been working in the field of education, health, and wellness over 22 years, and she has studied elementary, early childhood education, and theater arts at the University of Arizona. So more recently, she works with people to help evolve their consciousness through the use of light language. So let me welcome Yamania.
Yay.
Thanks, Yukon. I don't want to make you hold that video camera the whole time. Let's see if we can set this up to make it. I had it done so that it was high enough. Oh, I know what's wrong. What if we add a little angle?
Yeah.
There.
Okay.
There.
Okay. Cool.
Yes.
There I am.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you guys so much for having me here to Google. Thank you, Yukon, for making it possible for me to be here. And I'm excited to be here because I've heard so much about Google and the complex, and now I get to actually go and play pool and drink soda. So it's also really a deep privilege to bring some of this spiritual woo-woo into a corporate setting, because I feel like a lot of times corporations don't necessarily value or see the value in bringing in, spiritual matters into the workplace. It's often bypassed, overlooked. It's seen as impractical and ungrounded, and yet what they don't realize is that these energetic influences are so pertinent into the way that we interrelate as individuals, as well as how the larger company itself formulates and structures its way of working and delivering their products. Because we are so overly influenced by other people. Hold on, I'm gonna let this person in.
I guess there are people who want to come in.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay.
Oh, man.
Nice to see you. Sorry I'm late.
It's okay. So I was just saying that it's really nice to have Google, like a corporation, be able to bring in the spiritual woo-woo and the unpracticality of the practicality of what it is that we can actually offer. So today my talk is a little bit on living in your joy, but I have a different spin on this because I'm an evolutionary change agent. I work with evolution and consciousness and the way that we breed our consciousness and how it interacts with ourselves and the greater cosmic web of the universe. And where does joy fall into that? Well, our innate impulse of life is as creator, right? We were born from creation and we are here to create. This is our divine purpose. Our divine mission is creation. So when we are in creation, we are living in that joy space. We are being of service and we are offering a piece of ourselves, a reflection of ourselves out into the outer universe to reflect back to us about who we are. Make sense? Awesome. So I actually wanted to bring into the mix a little bit today 3 different pieces of the external influences that are affecting us and can alter the way that we perceive our reality, perceive the way that we are living in a joyful state, in the creation of the expansion and the spaciousness of who we are and what it is that we're here to do. All right. So the 3 parts of what I wanted to talk about are, first, the human frequency dynamic. The second part is the coherent field dynamic. And the third part is the heart coherence. So when we are talking about the human frequency dynamic, it's kind of a coin term that I've created, but what we need to know is that we are living, brilliant particles of pulsing light. So, science has basically come to the perspective that we are protons and electrons and neutrons, and we go a little bit smaller than that, and we get to quarks, and then we go a little bit smaller than that, and we're actually biophotons. So each one of us, within every single cell, as we get smaller and smaller and smaller, a biophoton is literally just a little pulse of light. So when we look up into the universe, we look up into the stars at night, that is an absolute reflection of who we are. We are this vast, expansive space of darkness or dark matter playing within the cosmic field of quantum consciousness. And the little pieces of matter that make us up are those little pulses of light and stars that are in the sky. So we are actually more space than we are actual physical, tangible matter. And then, so we are actually in the creation forms from these larger dark spaces and voids. It's the unmanifest source creation that moves through the consciousness of who we are. And I know this is a lot of words. Is this making sense to people? Sometimes when I speak, it kind of goes, but there's a piece that will resonate in your soul. There'll be a part of you inside that'll be like, I get what she's saying. I have no idea what she's saying, but I get what she's saying. And later it'll make sense. So I just want to let you know that. And if you have any questions at any moment, please let me know, okay? So we have this dark matter that is an intelligence. It's holding space, it's communicating information in the galaxy, reflecting to us what's actually happening within our own physical bodies at the same time. Cool. So then we also have the quantum field, or the coherent field dynamic. Now, how the individual impulse frequency works within a coherent field dynamic is that we each have our own unique frequency. These biophotons of light, although they are from the original source spark of light that birthed into creation, so we actually are all the same, but we are filtered. Our light is filtered through frequencies of our own personal thoughts and patterns, belief systems, situations that we've endured, the stories that we've created about ourselves or that have been told to us about who we are, shifts the patterning and frequencies of these impulses of light. So we all come here with our own unique, divine, individual frequency that resonates and shares with everybody else. And we have our own divine, unique pattern or blueprint of what we are here to do. Have you guys heard of that? Right? So we're walking in congruence with this divine blueprint of who we are. And it's when we are walking in this divine blueprint or internal impulse is where we have the most joy, because that's when we're walking in alignment. That's when we're allowed to be in the spaciousness of our creation. But it's when we hit up against the rock and the hard place that shows us, oh my gosh, this job sucks, right? Or this relationship is driving me crazy. This is our like little beacon point that shows us, oops, time to move in another direction. This in itself is the catalyst for a shift in consciousness, because all of a sudden what was working, the patterns and the way that we fit in together with the people that are in our lives, isn't working anymore, and we have to shift. So the coherent field dynamic, which also is really amazing about the coherent field dynamic, is that it is an access point to gain new information that would not otherwise be available to us if we were by ourselves. So we have our own unique frequency, right? And then we have this room of people that are in here right now, which actually everyone's vibrating like this, vibrating little pulses of light, frequency and sound. And when these individual frequencies, light and sound, come together, they ping off of each other and create an entirely different, like, geometric shape. So then the geometric shape of each one of us comes together and creates, like, say, a dodecahedron, right? And so the dodecahedron is vibrating with a certain impulse, which then opens the gateway to the quantum field. We become vortex spots of information, or vector points of information in the quantum field that exasperates into a different shape to access the consciousness of the quantum field to come through us to create and birth a whole new creation in consciousness, of consciousness. So, if you guys, when you guys walked into this room late, we had a certain field or coherent field dynamic of information that was permeating between all of us that we had established, and that was vibrating at like, oh, I don't know, like a triangle, right? So the triangle's like this is our triangle of information, bringing in the impulses of what it is that we want to create together, understand, influence one another, and then all of a sudden you came in, pop, we come through. So we are in the bridge of creating a new way of existing and being right now. We're in the evolution of consciousness. But in order for us to move into these new spaces of consciousness, it's paramount that we come together to create access and bridge these new awarenesses. So interpersonal relationships, one-on-one, create one dynamic versus a larger group. It allows us the ability to get information that we might not otherwise be able to obtain. So that's the coherent field dynamic. Does anyone have a question? You guys are good? I know, this is a lot. We'll get to the easy stuff soon. So the third part of what's important is then also realizing that our information, the emotions and feelings that we have emanate off of us in a certain frequency. And our thoughts and intentions have the power to shift and change our internal mechanism as well as the group field dynamic. So when someone walks in and they're grumpy and angry and like poopy, you know, there's two choices here that can happen. They can sit in the room and be grumpy when everybody else is happy, and they'll get so disgusted by all the happy people that they'll be forced to leave. Or they can allow the frequency and field to permeate through them and raise them out of that state of unhappiness and become more coherent with the whole field. Now, this is not for us, like when we're in a bad place, to ignore the fact that we're having a bad feeling. And a lot of times I find that in spirituality and people that are like, you know, studying spirituality, you know, we're told to live up here in this like place of love and joy and compassion. Well, that's what we're all striving for, but we're also human. And we have emotions, we have anger, we have pain, we have frustration, and it's okay that we have those. It's just a matter of the responsibility of how we manage those emotions. And it's our responsibility to understand how we walk into a room, and if we're feeling those things, we have to be responsible with our personal energy, that we're not throwing that at other people. But we're actually taking it and looking at it and going, yep, this is where I'm at right now. This is good. Thank you. There it is. And once we acknowledge it and that it's there, usually it dissipates. And it makes it so much easier to raise back up into the higher frequency and consciousness of the larger group dynamic. So the heart coherence piece of this is that, have you guys heard of heart math? Yay, so I'm like preaching to the choir. You guys know about this stuff. So we've got the coherent field dynamic. We've got the heart coherence, which is where we actually are bringing our mental state in balance with our heart state, which also balances the physical and emotional and mental state. So when we can actually bridge the heart, which is the ascension process, is actually an inward thing. It's not that we're moving upward in consciousness information. It's not like, you know, our frequencies shift, whether it's like higher or lower in the frequency doesn't necessarily like pertain to, oh yeah, my consciousness is so much better than yours because I vibrated a higher frequency. It's not about that. Our consciousness is shifting in the way that we interact in the coherent field dynamic is shifting, which is shifting our consciousness, but that doesn't mean that it's actually an external situation. It's actually all totally an internal. So the bridge is through the heart. And you guys know about the toroid field, right? Which is this spinning vortex of energy. It looks like about a donut, and we have a toroid field around our heart that spins around. And there's a hot cascading energy that moves through the center of it and creates a 0-point field. We can use the heart space and the toroid field as a way to be able to transmute, transform, and delete belief systems, patterns, emotions. Literally by allowing them to attract like an electron, like a magnet to the center and pour through. So this is actually a healing technique that we can use by bringing ourselves into our heart. It's also a free source of energy. Foster Gamble did a really great documentary on that if you ever get a chance to check it out. But the thing is the toroid field also lives around every single cell. It lives around the earth, it lives around the galaxy, it lives around every star, it lives around every single little biophoton in our body. So we're just this cascading spiral of cosmic energy interwoven with dark matter and obtaining new forms of consciousness through the quantum field by being vortex spots of frequency and light. Cool. So how does that pertain to joy? Anyone have any idea? I'm going to thread it all together. Anyone have an idea? Okay, I'll explain it.
Is it something along the lines of like you have a certain amount of energy within you and you have the ability to tap into it and like pull, I don't know, like light somehow? Is
Right.
that kind of
It's part of
something
it.
like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's like we have the capacity. Basically what I was going to explain, is that the first part of it, what I was talking about, the human frequency dynamic, right? When we understand the human frequency dynamic, that we are all just these little pulsations of light, that we really aren't these physical beings, that we are being reflected by everything in our universe, is a reflection of who we are, showing us and guiding us the way home into our hearts. We start to realize that the little things that are happening in our life are just fleeting moments in time. They aren't things that we need to attach to, because we're a part of something so much greater. And we're infinite. And time never stops. So your dog runs away and you're like,